Hi, and thank you for joining me as I record this little video to show you how I went through the process of painting the Happy Halloween arrow that is featured in the Decorative Painter. The first thing you're going to want to know is that this is painted on a black metal chalkboard arrow, and it's available at my website. And you can paint on one side and use chalk on the other, or you can paint on both sides. It's a very versatile piece, actually. And also just recently, you can get some masonite arrows. Those will also be available on my website soon. The first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to remove this jute hanger from our metal arrow. All the metal arrows come with a jute hanger. So I've untied the knot at one end, and I'm just going to pull this out and fold it up and put it away someplace safe. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to decoupage some tissue paper onto the background, and I like to use DecoArt's decoupage matte medium. The matte leaves a nice surface for you to paint on. It doesn't get slick or shiny, and I actually go through quite a bit of this decoupage medium because I like adding interest to the backgrounds of my pieces, whether they be metal or wood. And my favorite tissue paper right now is this newsprint paper that I found in the tissue paper department at Hobby Lobby. So, you know, if you have a Hobby Lobby near you, run on over to the gift wrapping department, and get yourself some of this. If you don't, I do sell it on my website. One sheet of this will do 3 arrows if you lay them out right. And I like to piece my tissue paper together onto my arrow. So, let's see. I'm going to tear this off and see how far I get over here. I can do quite a bit there, and then just a little bit in the corners there. Cool. So I've got basically my tissue paper enough to cover my piece. I'm going to take my decoupage medium and a large flat brush. Now, one little hint, and I've done this already once today, is you want to check your pattern and make sure that you're putting the tissue paper on the right side. If you don't, you can always just flip the pattern and paint it the opposite way. But according to the Halloween pattern, this is the direction the arrow should be facing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a coat of decoupage medium to the arrow. And I'm not going to do the whole arrow because it's metal. It will dry relatively quickly. So you don't want to, see, that's not the piece I wanted there. This is. I'm going to use that straight edge and just line it up along the one edge of the arrow there, just to save me some sanding later. So press it down. If you get little wrinkles, that's okay. That's good, actually. That adds some more interest to the background. And that's what this is all about, is just adding some interest to an otherwise boring background. So I'm going to go through and glue the rest of my stuff down. Now I'll take a little bit of decoupage and paint it over the tissue paper too, to help adhere it to the metal. Wrinkles are okay. Bubbles, you want to get rid of those. Okay, now let's do some more. I'll do the rest of the arrow here. Let's see. I'm going to put this like this, again using that edge. And really, if you get little spots that don't have tissue paper on them, that's okay. Kind of adds to the interest. Cut a little piece here to cover up this bigger thing. You don't want to piece it together, you know, with too many little pieces, because then it just makes floating a little bit more of a job than we want it to be. So there we go. Now I'm going to let this dry and then I'm going to remove the excess. So I'm going to pause for a moment while this dries. I just want to show you real quickly the easiest way to go around and remove the excess from the edges, which I've done most of the way around the arrow, is to take an emery board and just sand it off. It gives you a nice clean edge, and it's not a lot of work. One of the next things I'm going to do to add some interest to this background is I'm going to take a Stays-On ink pad in Timber Brown. I like to use browns because they don't blare and just scream at you from the background. They just are kind of soft and subtle there in the background. And I'm going to take a few assorted background stamps. And these are my favorites. They don't ever leave my painting desk. I like to use a handwriting script stamp and a chicken wire and this cheap little 50-cent decorative circle that I found at Michael's in the clearance bin. So just be on the lookout for those clearance stamps. You never know where you might find them. But I'm going to take my brown ink and my script stamp, and I'm just going to stamp randomly around. It doesn't have to be a complete imprint. It'll be fine the way it is. And as you see, I just added like 4 or 5 places. I'm going to take my favorite stamp, my chicken wire, and stamp that here and there. And granted, some of this is going to be covered up with our design, but that's okay. Some of it might peek through a little bit. So a few places with the chicken wire, and then I'm going to go in and add a few spots, and they don't have to be whole circles. They can be half circles or 3/4 circles or hardly any circle. But anyway, so there. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of my favorite things right now to use, and that is a piece of punchinello. Punchinello is the metallic ribbon that they cut sequins out of, and punchinella is what is left after they're done punching the sequins out. And I love to use it as a stencil. As you can see, I've used this piece quite often. So you can use it again and again and again. You can find it on Amazon, but you'll have to buy it in a large roll that will last you forever. So if you're just looking for a piece that you can use for a while, I do have that for sale on my website also, and there's enough here to last you a good long time. So I'm just going to use my cosmetic sponge and pick up some burnt umber. I like burnt umber again because it's subtle and soft and doesn't take away from the design. And I'm just going to randomly add some dots to the background here. And again, some will get covered up, but some of them will peek through. And it's just to add some interest. And then the last thing I'm going to do before I start applying my pattern and painting is I'm going to take burnt umber and a large flat brush, and I'm going to just float some burnt umber shading all the way around the outside edge. This doesn't have to be a perfect float. It's just looking to soften those hard edges, and it adds some more interest and kind of age the background just a little bit. It doesn't have to be a very tidy float. You can just kind of slap it on there. Because so much goes on top of it, it doesn't really matter, but we just wanted to soften and blend those edges down a little bit. All right, I'm going to put my pattern on and then I'll be back. As you can see, I've gone ahead and done the base painting. I like to block in my design and then start working on the details. But if you choose, you can just follow the directions as they're written in the magazine and work on each individual piece of the design on its own. Tongue is twisted right now. Sorry, apologize for that. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start demonstrating how I paint the pumpkins. So let's get started. I'm going to start by dry brushing some highlighting onto my pumpkins, and I will show you how I like to dry brush, and then if you have a way that you like to dry brush, by all means go ahead and do that. But if you struggle with dry brushing, you may want to give this a try. It really has helped my dry brushing, I think. Hopefully this will turn out well. And it's something I've been doing for years and years and years. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to dry brush some highlights on our pumpkin sections, which are called flutes, with moon yellow. Now, I like to use a Langnickel short round sable brush to do my dry brushing. And when you get them brand new, they come like this. They're very pointed. But after you use them for dry brushing for a while, they flatten out. And actually, that is a really good shape for them to be in for dry brushing. So what I like to do first is I'll put a little moon yellow out on my palette, and I'll take my brush and load it with some paint. And then what I do is I kind of rub it around in a circular motion. You know, I'm changing directions. And what I'm doing is I'm working some of that paint into the bristles of the brush. And once I get that in there pretty good, and you notice I stayed in the same area, I'll go to my towel and I'm going to wipe out some of that paint. Now, it's a dry brush. We didn't add any water to it. And then what I like to do is go to this area of my hand and start rubbing in a circular motion again. And when I hit my hand, normally it feels very cool. And so I'm going to rub around. And when it's not cold anymore, not cool anymore, that's a good indicator that you've taken enough paint out of the brush that you can go to your piece and start dry brushing. So I'm going to turn my little pumpkins a little cockeyed, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry brush, and you notice I have to scrub quite a bit to get some paint off. It looks really bright on the video. It's not quite that bright on the actual piece. But I'm just going down the middle, and I'm just going right through where the facial features are going to be, because they're painted in with black, and black covers everything almost. So you see I'm scrubbing really hard to get that paint off the brush, and that's as it should be. You don't want it to come off too easy. If you're getting blobs or streaks, that just means that you still have too much paint in the brush. And every time I reload, I go back through the steps and see I didn't take out enough paint, so I got a little blob. It'll be okay. So I'm going through each section, treating each flute as its own individual section. And dry brushing is kind of like riding a bike. Once you kind of get the hang of it, you know how to do it. But like I said, if you have a way you like to do it, then just do it that way. And here's another disclaimer. I have gone and I've checked the non-toxic rating on DecoArt paints on the government website, and they're not harmful. They're not going to hurt you. But if you have sensitive skin, you probably don't want to be rubbing stuff into your skin. But I've been doing this for years and years and years, and as you can see, the only thing is my hands got older, but nothing as a result of the paint. Okay, once you're done with that dry brush, you can wash your brush out. And another good thing about these brushes is that they will dry. You can rub them on your towel and dry them really well. So the next thing I want to do is I want to float some moon yellow highlighting on my pumpkins. And I'm just going to be working on these two over here, and I'll finish the third one off camera. So what I like to do is float moon yellow highlighting on the outside edge of each section. So if you start on the outside edge and then just move inside to the next section. That works really well. You're not wiping out any floats. Whoops. That was my brush trick for the day. Didn't mean to spin it and flip it on purpose. Now I'm going over here just because I want to. Now I'm going to turn my piece around, and it's always preferred for you to turn your piece to get the angle that you like. Okay, almost done there. Now this is going to go on pretty bright, but as it dries it tones down quite a bit. Okay, so it does look really bright on the video, but don't worry, it'll be okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to give our little pumpkin some cheeks, because you know pumpkins do have cheeks. It's just a given. And I'm going to do that with dragon fruit, and again I'm going to dry brush those cheeks on. If you want to wash them on or stipple them on, that's perfectly fine too. It's your piece. You just go to town on it. And I go through the same steps. And these are just really faint cheeks. They don't have to be really bright and blaring at you. You see, I just gave it a little touch of color there on his cheeks. And his cheeks go kind of at the top of the corners of his mouth. You couldn't see me, but I just pointed at the corner of my mouth. And I'm going to try to decide where this one goes, since I wiped my pattern off. Okay, nice round cheeks on our pumpkins. I'm going to float some shading on my pumpkin with Heritage Brick. And I always like to do 2 shading floats on pumpkins. And the first one is usually done to put some red into the pumpkin. Sometimes I float with the cinnamon drop or country red, but today I chose to use Heritage Brick. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to float the shading butted up against the highlights on the pumpkin first. I'm going right over those cheeks. It doesn't matter. They'll shine through later. Okay. And you also want to float to separate these pumpkins from each other. Knocking over my paint over there. Okay, now there are a few other places I like to float shading on my pumpkins, and that's going to be at the tops and the bottom of each flute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to treat again each flute as its own section, its own little pumpkin piece. And I'm just going to float a little bit of Heritage Brick in the bottom of each section. And what that does is it kind of helps to round out the pumpkin a bit. And it also helps tone down that moon yellow highlight attached too. So yes, you're floating a little bit over what you highlighted, but that's okay. Trust me, I haven't lied to you yet. Okay, top's done. Let's get to the bottom. As you can see, I kind of pity-pat and play with my floats a lot. It's not just a quick put it on in one fell swoop thing. I like to play with my floats and walk them out in corners and fill up V areas with color. Okay, they're looking better already. Now I'm going to come back with my dry brush and some warm white. Let's see if I have any left in that bottle. And I'm going to dry brush a little bit brighter highlight on the tops of my pumpkin. And you're saying to yourself, but you just shaded the top of your pumpkin. Yes, I did. But I'm coming down a little bit from the top, and I'm just gonna drop some highlighting in the tops of those flutes. Just a little bit. Just to make them shine a little. You can see on those dry brushes I was picking up the wrinkles, and that's okay. It adds to the interest. You notice too that I'm always trying to follow the shape of that pumpkin. Okay? The next thing we want to do, the last thing that we'll do to these pumpkins, is we will float some shading again. Remember I said I like to do 2 shadings with burnt umber. And all the places that you floated with Heritage Brick, you're going to just go back and float some shading with burnt umber. So you can just bounce around your pumpkins a little bit so you're not wiping out floats. Oops. And I'll go off camera so you can't even see the pumpkins. How's that for helpful? Let's see. Let me go here. I'm going to go in the tops just like I did with the Heritage Brick. And then I'm going to go, oops, that was not smart. Pulled my brush into warm white. You see, we do make mistakes. Guess I had my paint puddles a little too close to each other. Okay, I'll do the tops of these. And the bottoms. And we'll call that part of the pumpkins done. All right, some good looking pumpkins there. I'm going to go off camera now, dry this, put the pattern on for their faces, and I'll be back. Okay, I've put the pattern on for the faces and I went ahead and based them in 2. Let's work on our stems a little bit. They're based in evergreen, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a liner brush and some moon yellow, And I'm going to line some highlighting on one side of them. Just to, you know, add some interest and some ridges to them. Doesn't have to be real neat or anything. I want to let that dry. I have this handy dandy Ranger heated craft gun, and it's great for these quick little drying, when you need to dry something relatively quickly, and it doesn't make a lot of noise, so it doesn't irritate you quite so much. And then the next thing I'm going to do on those stems is I'm going to float some burnt umber on the opposite side of where I lined that highlighting, and also down against where the stem sticks into the pumpkin. So just a couple of quick little things just to add interest to the pumpkin stems. Okay. Next thing I want to do is I want to take my dry brush again and some moon yellow, and I'm going to dry brush some highlighting around those facial features. Sorry, that's jumping around a lot. Just to make them stand out from the pumpkin a little bit. So not a lot of dry brushing, but enough just to kind of pop those features out a little bit. So, see, it doesn't have to be a career. It can just be a quick little dry brush. Okay, and that looks really bright, but it's really not that bad. Okay. I'm also going to take and float some moon yellow next to my facial features. You thought these were just easy little pumpkins, but there's a whole lot of steps to them. So I'm just going to pick one side. In fact, I'm just going to work on one pumpkin for you. So I'm going to pick this side for this one, and the opposite side. And this just pops them out just a little bit more even. And I'll go here. If you pick the other side, that's okay. It's not going to matter a whole lot. I'm going to go across the top just to pop that top lip, if pumpkins had lips. And then also down this, just this left side here a little ways. Okay. I'm also going to float some moon yellow inside the facial features. So I'm going to go inside here, and let's see, I'll go across inside the top of the mouth. And this side of the nose, the right side, and the right side of this eye. Okay. It's not a very strong float, just enough to break up the black. And then I'm going to take some Irish moss and a liner brush, and I'm going to give my little guy a tongue. I mean, if a pumpkin has cheeks, it has to have a tongue. Right? And then I'm going to take warm white and my liner brush, and I'm going to line and dot some highlights inside those facial features. So, let's see. I'm going to do a little dot. A line. Whoops. Not so much a line. That works. Okay. Just to add some interest to him. And then there is a shadow that gets lined either above or next to each facial feature, and you kind of give him some little eyebrows. And that's done with your liner brush and a wash of Heritage Brick, which was that first shading color that we used. So I'm going to go probably to the right side of the mouth. And I'll go to the right side there. And then I'm going to go to the right side of the nose, and I'm on the pumpkin itself, but right next to the facial feature. And I'm going to go around the top of the eye. And then I'm going to take that wash of color and just kind of give him a little eyebrow that hooks into that shadow. Okay? So there you go. You've got your pumpkins. Alright, the next little guy we're going to work on is our ghost. As you can see, I've put the pattern on for his face and for the little bow that goes around his neck. The first thing we're going to do with him, he's painted with warm white, just a couple of coats, so that you can still see some of the background going through him. So the first thing we're going to do is dry brush some cheeks with dragon fruit. Now he's white, so you want to make sure you keep those cheeks very soft. You don't want to have blaring pink cheeks. And hopefully I won't have blaring pink cheeks when I get done. But we're going to give him his nice round cheeks right above the corners of his mouth. And these are dry brushed on, but I'm using a really light touch as opposed to scrubbing the dry brush on. As you can see, I have a little wrinkle that I'm dealing with right there, but that's okay. I don't mind at all. Okay, and then we are going to float some shading on him with Blue Haven. Okay, where's my brush? Now it's here somewhere. Doesn't help when you move things around. There it is. So I'm going to float Blue Haven, and basically every side of this little ghost gets Blue Haven floated on it. So I'll just start up here at the tip of his head and work my way down. And Blue Haven's a nice soft color. It's not gonna be too dark for this little ghost guy, because we still want him to be white. And I'm going to float above where his little tie is going to be, and below. And I'm going to go ahead and float down the other side of his body, or whatever you call a ghost's shape. And some shading in the bottom there. I'm going to dry this real quick. And then I'm going to come back with my dry brush, and I'm going to dry brush some Blue Haven in some of the areas where, if you look at the picture, you can see there they kind of are walked in little V areas in the folds and turns of the ghost a little bit. So wherever there's like a little dent, I'm gonna, ooh, got some dragon fruit on there, so I'll just get a different dry brush. Let's see, I have plenty. It's not lacking those. Okay. So you see you need to wash your brush out good. Although I could be picking it up off my hand. Okay, so I'm going to dry brush in those little folds and stuff. And it's not going to be as dark as we want it right now, because I'm going to come back with some darker blue and dry brush a little bit more. But you see, I'm not spending a lot of time. I'm just deepening those little crevices on him a little bit. Okay. Then we're going to paint the eyes and the mouth with lamp black, and I will do that off camera real quick. Okay, eyes and mouth are painted in with lamp black, and I went ahead and lined in the little tie around his neck. So one of the first things I want to do is I want to take a liner brush and some Blue Haven, and I'm going to make a wash. So 80% water, 20% paint. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line a shadow around the top of each eye, just to kind of set his eyes into his ghost body a little bit. You might not be able to see this, but trust me, it's there. Okay, and I'm going to also line that below his mouth. So just this larger part here. Now the eyes, I'm going to get closer up so you can see how they do those eyes. Come on, focus. Back up a little bit. All right, I'm going to paint, I forgot to pull the paint, a little crescent shape stroke in the bottom of each eye with purple cow. I do that with my liner brush. And I want you to notice it's a crescent shape stroke, so like a crescent moon shape stroke in the bottom of the eye, but it doesn't touch the bottom of the eye. You want to leave just a sliver of lamp black showing in the bottom of the eye. And this is how I like to paint eyes on most of the things I do. We'll be painting this way again with the Little Witch. And here's the nice thing about that. If you get your crescent stroke a little too big, which I did right there, I can come back with some lamp black, or if it's not quite the shape you want it to be, I can come back with some lamp black and fix it. Okay, all fixed. So he's got some cute little cock eyes. I'm going to line a highlight in the middle of those purple strokes by picking up some purple cow and picking up some warm white. So I'm getting a lighter value of purple cow. I need a little bit more warm white on my palette. That was the bottle. And so I'm just going to take my liner brush and just line a lighter value of purple cow through the center of that eye. He's starting to look cute. And then I'm going to line a highlight in the black part of the eye with just straight warm white. And I'm also going to add a little touch of a highlight in the mouth too. But in the black part of the eye, I just want to add a couple little highlights. And then in his mouth a little bit here. Okay, so he's starting to get some character now. Now we're going to come back and we're going to dry brush a little bit deeper shading in on this on the ghost. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to pick up some Blue Haven, and I'm going to pick up just a smidgen, just a little touch of lamp black. What I'm looking for is a gray, a blue-gray color. Now I could probably go to my paint rack and pull out a color, but we need so little of it that it's just easier to just brush mix it really quick. And so in those little V areas that I dry brushed in earlier, I'm going to deepen those areas right now with this little bit of blue-gray. Just to make them a little bit more pronounced. Okay. This guy needs to be... Okay. Looks good to me. So he's got some eyelashes. And I'm just going to take my liner brush and some thin down lamp black, and I'm going to give him a few little eyelashes. Now I like to take and kind of push my eyelashes out. I don't like to line individual lashes. So I put them at the top and in the corners of the eye a little bit. And then what you want to do is you want to pick up some Blue Haven on that brush and make that dirty gray again, that dirty blue gray. And he has some wrinkles that are above and below each eye. And so you want to just do those thin liner, and they just kind of start from the corner of his eye and go up, because he's an old ghost. Probably my ghost. Okay, so he has some little wrinkles. He was pretty quick and easy. The little tie that's around his neck, of course I said was painted in Irish moss. I'm going to line some highlighting on it with Moon Yellow, and I'm not real particular about where it goes. I just want to make sure that there are some differences in values on this thing. And then I'm going to take Evergreen and I'm going to line some shading. So my shading is going to come in the edges here where his little thing is turning around his neck. It's going to go from the knot. You want to touch a little beside the loop. Okay, so there you go. And our ghost is complete. So I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to put the pattern on my little witch, and I'll be back. Time to work on our little witch face. I put the pattern on. You may not be able to see it. I put it on with white graphite. I like to use the lightest I can get away with. So we are going to dry brush some highlighting on our little witch's face. And let's see, with warm white. Her face is painted with coral shell, which seems to be my go-to for flesh colored faces these days. And I'm basically just going to dry brush above her eyes, down the sides of her face. And her chin, the middle of her neck. I got a little bright. want to give her some nice cheeks. Of course, with my favorite cheek color, dragon fruit. These are going to be nice round cheeks. She's got a pretty wide face. I just want to show you the back of my hand. Look, it goes from there all the way to there. I work my way across my hand a lot when I dry brush. So let's give her some cheeks. My brush is a little wet. So let's dry it a little more and give her some cheeks. Really can't see those too much. Try a drier brush. It's not like I don't have enough of these brushes. Okay, that's a little better. Her cheeks are a little bit more pronounced. I'm going to float some highlighting with warm white inside her nose. Her nose is just a little sideways C-stroke. So I'm going to float the color up inside her nose a little bit, just to make it stand out a little bit. Okay. And then we are going to paint her eyes and her mouth with lamp black. And again, I'll just pop the camera off and come back when that's painted in. All right, we're back. She has a little bit of a lower lip, and that's just a little C-stroke float of dragon fruit there below. Her mouth is not real big. But she needs a lip. At least a bottom one anyway. We are going to line a shadow above each eye with a wash of shading flesh. See if I can get it out of the bottle. Yep, there it is. And just like we did on the ghost, we're going to do that to her. So I start about halfway down and go around the top and come back down on the other side. And that just sinks her eyes into her head a little bit. Dry that real quick. And then we're going to start doing some shading with shading flesh on her face. So I'm going to shade on her face next to her hair with shading flesh. And I'll just kind of start in the middle just because that's easier. For me anyway. And I'll come up to that little point. I'm going to go on her neck, under her chin. Okay. And let's do the other side. Next to this hair. And we're going to go above her nose. So just a little C-stroke of shading flesh, butted up against that highlight float that you did. Okay, quick shading done. The eyes are done just like we did the ghost eyes, but her eyes are green, so we're going to line a crescent-shaped stroke in the bottom of each of her eyes with Irish moss. Again, not all the way down, touching the bottom, leave just a hair of the black showing through. Okay. You're going to line a highlight on those green strokes with moon yellow. So just through the center. Just a little bit of moon yellow, just to highlight them a little bit. And then I also come back with some warm white and line an even brighter little highlight. It's basically just a little tap down the center of those eyes. There's also a couple of little highlight strokes in the black part of the eye, just like we did on the ghost. And you also want to add a little stroke inside the mouth. And she has some eyelashes too, and those are painted with thinned lamp black. Again, across the top, in the corners. She doesn't have eyebrows though. All right. We are going to work on her hair now. I'll be right back. I'm going to pull the colors for her hair, and then we'll do her hair. All right, let's give her some hair. Her hair is painted with Purple Cow, one of my favorite purples. And I am going to dry brush some highlighting on her hair, basically through it all, with lilac. So I'm just going to lighten it up a little bit. Okay. Right. And then I'm going to dry brush some brighter highlighting with warm white. And you can do that by just picking up some warm white on your dirty brush. But I didn't catch myself soon enough, and I went ahead and washed that brush out. So I'm going to reload a brush with just warm white. Okay, so this is basically going all over the hair. And then I'm going to take my liner brush and some thinned lilac. And I'm going to line some strands of hair. Not too many. You don't want to get too carried away, but you do want to give the idea that there are some strands of hair. And again, follow the shape of the hair. I'm going to go in and I'm going to float some highlighting on those inside edges next to her face with lilac also. Sometimes I think about getting a streak of purple in my hair, and then I come to my senses. I'm going to float some shading on the hair with lavender. So I'm going to float on the hair, under the hat, and then also on the outside edge of the hair. Alright, pretty purple hair. Let me dry this really quick. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to deepen that shading with some floats of dioxazine purple. And then I'm going to take my liner brush and I'm going to add just some little wisps of hair around her face with thin dioxazine purple. I keep doing this. I keep putting my brush down and then I can't find it back. I'm sure you don't have that problem at all. So everywhere I floated lavender, I'm just going to go back and deepen those floats with some dioxazine purple. It's such a pretty purple. Alright, and let's add those little wisps. I'm going to remember where I put that brush now. Okay, looking pretty good. Next up is our hat. The hat itself is based with graphite, and the hat band is Irish moss. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to dry brush and line a little highlighting on our hat with desert turquoise. So, loading my brush, wiping it out. So I'm going to dry brush some desert turquoise. Now you notice my base coat of graphite isn't all that solid, but that's okay because there's a lot of stuff that goes on top of this. So it really didn't have to be completely opaque. I said I was going to line some highlighting. I'm going to do that across the front of that brim. Just a little line. of desert turquoise. And then I'm going to pick up some warm white on that dirty brush that still has desert turquoise in it, that dry brush. And I'm going to dry brush a little bit brighter highlighting with that lighter value of desert turquoise. And again, with the liner brush and a little bit of warm white mixed in there, I'll line a little bit brighter highlight there. And then you can wash your dry brush out. You're going to float shading on your hat with lamp black. And that basically gets every edge. I'll start here and float inside the brim where it's turned around going towards the back of her head. So I'm going against the hair on the hat brim right there. I'm going to go above the hat band. Try to stay on the hat, not so much on the hat band. Down the tail. And down the sides of the hat. I'm going to go inside the brim a little bit. And see how I dropped it down a little bit so that it gives the idea that there's a rim. And I'm going to go up this other side of the very tip of the hat. And one last little place. I just want to darken this curve here, this end of the hat. All right, there you go. The hat band is based in Irish moss, and we're going to dry brush some highlighting through it with moon yellow. Oops, very wet brush. Not going to be much of a dry brush there. I'm almost running out of hand over here. And then we have some little stripes on the hat, and those are put on with your liner brush and spiced pumpkin. So I'm just going to take my liner brush and kind of flatten out the brush so it has like a square tip. I don't know if you can see that. And I'm going to line some stripes, and I'm going to start them above the hat band and then pull them down onto the hat band. And if they don't go all the way down to the bottom, to the brim, that's okay. Doesn't matter. If you want them to go all the way down, they can. And then we are I'm going to dry those really quick. And then I'm going to take some moon yellow and I'm just going to line a little highlight on the stripes. Not a big deal, just a little bit of a kind of dry brushed line of moon yellow from the top of each stripe down. And then the hat band itself gets shaded with evergreen, which I conveniently tossed away on my last piece of palette paper. And I'm going to float this evergreen on the hat band along the bottom edge next to the hat brim, and it's going to go across all those stripes. So it doesn't matter if it's on the orange stripes or not. Okay, so there we go. Let's work on her dress. Her dress is painted with desert turquoise. And I'm going to dry brush some highlighting on her dress with desert turquoise plus warm white. So I'm looking for a lighter value of desert turquoise. And that's just going to go basically all over the dress. There are some little stripes on her dress. You're going to line those on with spiced pumpkin. Find the infamous liner brush back. And when I line stripes on things like this, I always like to start in the middle and just work my way around. And again, I'm starting to curve these because I want to follow that shape. Right? And then you're going to come back with your liner brush and some moon yellow, and you're going to line some highlighting on those stripes. I know. So if you're really good and made them really thin, then you have your work cut out for you. But basically, just through the center of them a little bit. The dress is shaded basically around every edge, and to give her kind of a sleeve with true blue. So I'm going to go on her shoulders, under her collar, and across the bottom edge with floats of true blue. If you can get in there next to that pumpkin, that'd be good too. So I just kind of picked a place and gave her the idea of an arm there. Try to get a little bit more dark in here. All right. Dress is complete. We have her collar, and that is painted with dragon fruit. And I'm going to dry brush some highlighting on it with dragon fruit plus warm white. And that's just basically through the center. And I'm going to float shading on it with cinnamon drop. And that's going to go basically around every edge. So the scalloped edge, the edge next to her neck, and down the sides that are under her hair. So let's It's very pretty. I love cinnamon drop on top of dragon fruit. It's a very nice combination. Cool. And you're going to need your liner brush and some lamp black. And we're going to line and dot the spider web that's on her collars. So thin lamp black in your liner brush. Just going to line. That spider web. So you get the idea here. And this will be the same way that we do the spider webs that are by the pumpkins. We're just going to line them and dot them with lamp black. And then just little dots at the intersections. And at the ends. Now I did dots on either side of the main vertical line, because sometimes you have webs that don't line up, and that's okay. Okay, and there is a little warm white highlight lined on these webs. Don't have to make it a career, but it does add to look of the webs. So just through the center, touch a little bit of warm white, and then also just a little line that goes vertically up across the web. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and line the other webs that are on here and paint the little spider, and he's basically just done with lamp black and with some warm white highlights. And then I'll be back and we'll do a little bit more background stenciling, and I'll show you how to do the lettering. So I'll see you in a few. Well, we are almost done. We just need to add our lettering to our piece, and you do that by making a copy of the lettering that's provided with the pattern. Or you can print out your own if you want yours to say something else. I gave you the name of the font that I used and the size of the font. And what I like to do is take my scissors and cut out the words. Actually, you're going to cut out each individual letter in a little square around the letter. If you want to, you could leave it together and just do the word completely. But for this piece, I did each individual letter. So all I'm doing is cutting those letters apart. So in that pile is Halloween. And I'm going to cut out happy. And then you're going to kind of lay it out on your picture how you want to spell. I mean, not how you want to spell it, it's going to be spelled how it's spelled, but where you want to place these letters. You know, you could line them up all nice and straight, but that'd be kind of boring, so we will just do them so they're a little bit wonky or crazy. But you can adjust them however you'd like. But you just want to get an idea of where you want these to be placed. And I think I want to move it just a hair that way. So then I'm going to get out my handy dandy decoupage medium and my brush, and I'm going to lay down just a little coat of decoupage where I'm going to place the letter, and then a little bit of decoupage on top of the letter. Well, you don't want the letter there. And so you just go along and do your lettering like this. So I'm going to place the rest of the letters, dry it, and come back and show you the next step. Well, we are almost done. We just need to add our lettering to our piece, and you do that by making a copy of the lettering that's provided with the pattern. Or you can print out your own if you want yours to say something else. I gave you the name of the font that I used and the size of the font. And what I like to do is take my scissors and cut out the words. Actually, you're going to cut out each individual letter in a little square around the letter. If you want to, you could leave it together and just do the word completely. But for this piece, I did each individual letter. So all I'm doing is cutting those letters apart. So in that pile is Halloween. And I'm going to cut out Happy. And then you're going to kind of lay it out on your picture how you want to spell. I mean, not how you want to spell it. It's going to be spelled how it's spelled. But where you want to place these letters. You could line them up all nice and straight, but that'd be kind of boring. So we will just do them so they're a little bit wonky or crazy. But you can adjust them however you'd like. But you just want to get an idea of where you want these to be placed. And I think I want to move it just a hair that way. So then I'm going to get out my handy dandy decoupage medium and my brush, and I'm going to lay down just a little coat of decoupage where I'm going to place the letter, and then a little bit of decoupage on top of the letter. Well, you don't want the letter there. And so you just go along and do your lettering like this. So I'm going to place the rest of the letters, dry it, and come back and show you the next step. Okay, I have the letters all glued in place and it's dried. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to knock the whiteness of this paper down a little bit. So I'm going to take my flat brush and I'm going to make a little wash of burnt umber. And I'm just going to paint this wash over each letter just to knock the brightness of the paper down. Because I got the brightest paper I could when I was buying it. Okay, and see, that just kind of helps drop it back a little bit so it doesn't stand out and shout at you again. Oh, missed a little corner there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my liner brush, and with a wash of burnt umber, I'm going to line a shadow on the background next to the letter, not the letter, but the square, and to the left and bottom of each little square. And that just pops. Makes the letters stand out a little bit. I know we just knocked them down so they wouldn't stand out. But this just kind of adds to the interest of those letters. So it doesn't matter what it's on top of. You're just going to line a wash of burnt umber to the left and bottom of each one of those little squares. And I do this on just about every word grouping or letter that I decoupage on top. Okay, now let's let that dry a little bit. We have one more thing to do. Well, actually two. We want to get this dry. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a black Identa pen, use the small end, and I'm going to outline each one of these little squares. And it doesn't have to be neat. It can be kind of rough and sketchy. And hopefully your Identa pen will work. This paper might be just a little wet still. Let me dry it a little bit more. But you get the idea. We're going to outline each rectangle. And all we're doing is adding a little bit more interest. On the paper, off the paper, that doesn't matter. I will come back and finish these letters in just a minute, but I also want to come back with my punchinella, and I want to come back with a little bit of burnt umber, and I'm going to just stencil in a stencil a few more little areas of circles here and there on my design. And what I'm doing is I'm just adding some more interest and dropping things into the background a little bit more. And it's, you know, just a few spots. And this goes on top of your design a little bit. So I've done it like 3 spots. If you find some place you want to add some more interest up here, that's fine. But just another little layer of interest to your design. So there you go. The next thing you do is give this a coat of decoupage just to seal everything down. Let it dry. Don't forget to sign it. Put your jute hanger back in, and there you go. You have yourself a nice little happy Halloween arrow. And thank you again for joining me.